Okay, so I have here two instances of the game. So basically, one of them is going to be the host, and the other is the client. So I'm going to click here on host game, and let's allow the server to run. And then we're going to connect to local host. Let's connect. Alright, let's play. I'm going to now try a win situation. Okay.
Hi guys, welcome back to another tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to make a Tic-Tac-Toe game, or simply X and O game, which is a multiplayer LAN-based game in C#. We're going to need a label, a text box, 2 buttons, and a group box. Alright, so here is the final look of our form. What we're going to want to do next is create the form of the game itself. So we want to go to the Solution Explorer, right click on the project, and click Add, and then choose Windows 4. I'm going to call it Game. Alright, so here's the form of the game. For this, we're going to need a label and 9 buttons. Okay, so here is the final look of our form, as you see here. So this label is going to indicate whether it's your turn or it's your opponent's turn. Okay, so let's discuss the logic of the game. So there's a win if there is X or O in the horizontals, or the verticals, or the diagonals, right? So basically in the positions 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, 6, or 7, 8, 9, so these cover the horizontals, or the verticals 1, 4, 7, 2, 5, 8, 3, 6, 9, or the diagonals 1, 5, 9, or 3, 5, 7. So basically what we're going to do now is create the function that validates the logic and indicates whether there is a win, a loss, or a draw. So we're going to right click here and go to View Code. Okay, so first of all we're going to add some attributes. So private char player char. This indicates the character of the player, whether it's a X or O. And private char opponent, opponent char. This indicates the character of the opponent. So when the player is X, the opponent is O, and vice versa. Okay, we're now going to create our function that validates the logic. We're going to call it check state. So private bool check state. Return false by default. Okay, so we're going to now check for the horizontals, right? So this is horizontals. So if button 1 the text equals button 2 the text, and button 2 the text equals button 3 the text, and button 3 the text not equal empty string. So here we have a win situation, but we're gonna check if the character in the in these buttons is the player character, then we won. else we lost the opponent 1. Okay, so we're gonna type if button1 the text of 0. So we're basically getting the first character, or the character of in the button1 text, equals player tar, then label1 the text equals u1, and message box dot show u1. Alright, else you lost, so label 1 the text equals you lost, and message box dot show you lost. And then we're gonna return true. So basically this means that the game ended when we return true. So it's gonna end whether if we have a win, a loss, or a draw. Otherwise the game will continue, so we are returning false by default. We're going to do the same for the other horizontals, the verticals, and the diagonals. Okay, so now we finished the win and loss states. We're gonna handle the draw. So what we're gonna basically check for is that we do not have a button with empty string, and that's it. If we have this, then we are in a draw state. Okay, so now we're gonna wanna make a new function which is called freeze board. So basically it disables all the buttons. As the name suggests, it freezes the board, right? So private void freeze board button1 that enabled equals false, and we're gonna do the same for the other buttons. Alright, so now we're gonna create the function unfreeze board. Private void unfreeze board. Alright, so basically this function will be called after the opponent plays, so that we enable only the buttons that are still empty for the other player to put his move, right? So we're gonna check each button and see if this button is really empty. Then what we're gonna want to do is just enable that button, right? But if it's not empty, then this button cannot be selected anymore, so it's gonna still be disabled. So we're gonna type if button1 dot text equals empty string, then it can be enabled. So button1 dot enabled equals true. Okay, and we're gonna do the same for the other buttons. So what we're gonna do next is basically make the function for receiving a move, but in order to do that we're gonna add a new attribute to our class here. So we're gonna add private. First of all, we're gonna be including using system.net.sockets. Alright, and then we're gonna add private socket. I'm gonna name it sock. Okay, and we're gonna just create that object later on. So let's move down and create our receive move function. Okay, so let's type private void receive move. Okay, so basically this function is gonna be waiting for a message to be sent by the opponent, and that message is gonna contain the place or the number of the button that the opponent has placed his X or O in, right? So we're gonna create a byte buffer, so byte array, and we're gonna call it buffer is equal to new byte of 1. So basically this is a byte array of size 1, and then we're gonna type sock.receive and then provide the buffer. Okay, so basically what this line does is that it's gonna be waiting for the opponent to send his move, and then put that move or put that number in our buffer. So we're now gonna check the buffer to see which place did the opponent put his move in, right? So we're gonna check if buffer of 0, which means the item number 0 in this array, which is the first item, is equal to 1, then basically button 1, the text is equal to opponent char dot to string, right? This means that the opponent put his move in button 1, basically, or in the position 1. We're gonna do the same for the other buttons. Okay, so far so good. Now we're gonna move back to the constructor of this class, and we're gonna add 2 attributes to constructor. Basically, the first one is going to be bool is host, which indicates whether we are hosting the game or we're just connecting to a host, right? So this means whether we are the server or we are a client connecting to a server. Okay, the next thing is string IP, which is gonna be the IP of the server in case we are a client connecting to the server, and we're gonna make it by default equals null. So what we're gonna want to do next is create a background worker. So it's basically a function running in the background asynchronously, just to handle receiving a response from the opponent. So we're gonna type here an attribute called private background worker, and we're gonna call it message receiver equals new background worker, and we're gonna type right after the initialize component message receiver dot do work plus equals, and then you're gonna press a tab. It's gonna create automatically a new function here. So basically this new function is what this background worker is gonna do once it's called. So we're gonna leave this for now, but we know that this is responsible for receiving the message or the position of the opponent's move, right? So we're gonna continue with the constructor of the game class. We're gonna type check for illegal cross-thread calls. We're gonna set this to false, and then we're gonna check if is host. Then this means that we are the server. So we need to add a new attribute here. It's called private TCP listener. We're gonna call it server, and we're gonna set it to null. And then private TCP client, we're gonna name this client, and go back in our if condition. So if we are the host, then the player character is gonna be X, alright, and then the opponent character is gonna be O, and then the server is equal to new TCP listener, and here we're gonna provide the address that this server is gonna be listening at, or accepting, and the port that this listener is gonna listen to. So we're gonna accept any IP basically. So system.net.ip address.any, and then a comma, and then the port. I'm gonna use port 5732. Then server.start, so that our server starts listening. Sock, which is our socket that we previously created, is equal to server.accept socket. So basically we're gonna accept the incoming connection and then assign this socket to our created object sock. Then we can use this sock object to either send or receive a message over this created channel. Alright, so else we are a client connecting to a server. So in this case, the player character is gonna be O, and the opponent character is gonna be X, and in a try catch block we're gonna type client equals new TCP client, and it's gonna take the IP of the server and then the port, which is 5732 as we mentioned before. Sock equals client.client. So this is our socket that we're gonna use, and then we're gonna call the message receiver to receive the move of the opponent. So message receiver dot run worker async, right? So when you call this function, basically the background worker executes the function the function do work that we previously assigned to our do work event. Okay, so we're gonna catch any exception if occurs. Message box.show ex.message, and then close the for. Okay, So the next step that we're gonna want to do is write the implementation of the message receiver do work function. So first of all, what we're gonna want to do is check the state of our board. So basically, if check state, this means that we reached, if this is true, then we reached the end of the game, whether a draw, winning, or loss. So we're gonna simply return without doing anything. However, if this is not the case, then we're gonna freeze our board and we're gonna set label one.text to opponent's turn, and then we're gonna receive the move from the opponent, and then label one.text is equal to your turn. Okay, so basically we're gonna switch the turn after receiving the opponent's move, and then we're gonna check if not check state, which means that if we're still in the game, then we're gonna unfreeze the board, right? So unfreeze the board in order to put our move in one of the available empty spots. So that's it for the message receiver function. So the next step that we're gonna want to do is actually sending our move to the opponent. So we're going to the design, the form, and we're gonna double click on each button. Let's start with button 1, and we're gonna type in here byte array. I'm gonna call it num, which indicates the number of the spot that we selected, is equal to 1 in curly braces, then sock.send, and then num, send our array, then button one.text is equal to player character.string to string. So basically we're gonna fill this button with our character because we selected this spot to place our move in. Then we're gonna call the function of the background worker, so message receiver dot run worker async, because when we send our move, we're then expecting or waiting for the opponent's move. So this is basically what we do. So we're gonna do the same for all of the 9 buttons. Okay, so the last step that we are gonna do in this game form is basically adding some code in the form closing. So we're gonna select our form, we're gonna go to properties, and we're gonna press on this events button right here, and we're gonna select form closing. We're gonna just double click on this, and we're gonna write message receiver dot worker supports cancellation equals true, and message receiver dot cancel async to just stop the background worker, and then if server is not equal to null, which basically means that we are hosting a server, then we're gonna want to stop this server. So server.stop. Alright, so we're now good with the game form. So let's move back to our form 1, this lovely form. Okay, so we're gonna double click on the connect button, and we're gonna create an object from our game class. So game, I'm gonna call it new game equals to new game, right? And here we're not the host, so we're gonna set host to false, and the IP address is gonna be in text box 1.text. Okay, so now we wanna make visible equals false. Okay, and now we're gonna check if not new game dot is disposed. This means that there were no problem in the constructor of our class. Then we just want to show that class. So new game dot show dialog, so that it appears, right? And when it closes, we want to get our original form back, so visible equals true. Now let's double click on the host game, and we're gonna create an object game new game equals new game, and this time we're gonna set is host to true, and visible is equal to false if not new game dot is disposed. Then we're gonna show the new game dot show dialog, and then visible equals to true at the end. Alright, so we should be good to go now. Okay, so I have here two instances of the game. So basically one of them is going to be the host and the other is the client. So I'm going to click here on host game, and let's allow the server to run, and then we're going to connect to local host. Let's connect. Alright, let's play. I'm gonna now try a win situation. Okay, as you see, everything is good, and when we close, it opens the form again. Let's make this host a game and make this one connect to it, but not using the local host, using the IP address. So we're gonna type cmd and then type ipconfig to get our IP. I'm using a wireless LAN adapter in my laptop, so this is my IP. I'm gonna copy that and paste it right here and connect, so it works. Alright, so let's try another winning scenario. Alright, here you go. Let's now try a draw scenario. So that's it, guys. Thanks a lot for watching.